righty. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. Hope that your week is it went well and it's hopefully you'll have a great weekend. Um, we're gonna get started in just a second. Um,
Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. We are Pre-Med CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021. Our goal as an organization was to create an online community for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone. We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students, people that lack the financial resources, or just those that do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they're virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. PST, and on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. PST.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel. Many of our sessions will end with Q&A with our speakers. Any questions that you have can be put in the Q&A section on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answered.
After you have attended our event, you can log on to our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you'll be awarded a 2-hour mentorship certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with our upcoming events or want to tell your pre-med friends about Pre-Med CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Pre-Med CC.
Alrighty, everyone. So again, welcome. And I would like to first introduce Miss Anila Ahmad, who is the admission officer coordinator for the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine and the Office of Admissions and Student Programs. She advises and guides potential students on the DVM admissions process and assists in the planning and execution of DVM ceremonies and events. She began her academic journey as a transfer student before completing her Bachelor of Science at UC Davis. Prior to her transfer, Ms. Ahmed attended both American River College and Sacramento City College. So welcome.
Welcome, everyone. I'm also going to go ahead and let our ambassadors introduce themselves now as well. They'll be giving you a little brief introduction about themselves, as well as providing you with information about which undergraduate institution they attended, as well as their career area focuses. Kathryn, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, you can hear me okay? Great. Okay, hi everyone, I'm Kathryn. We actually just started our 4th year, super exciting at UC Davis, and my area of focus is small animal, most likely ER, so a rotating internship following graduation. I completed my undergraduate studies at Boise State in Idaho, but I did attend junior college or community college in the East Bay area in Livermore at Las Positas College, and then I transferred all of my credits from there.
Can jump in next. My name is Shannon. I am also a 3rd year going on 4th year. My areas of focus are in zoologic medicine and also in pathology. For undergrad, I attended Cal Poly Pomona in Southern California. I took a few community college courses, but they were online, so I didn't attend in-person community college courses, but I have a little bit of experience there.
Hi everyone, my name's Kimberly. I also go by Kim. I went to UC Davis for my undergraduate education. I studied animal biology with a minor in public health sciences. I'm currently a 2nd year student at the veterinary school as well as in their dual degree program. So I'm also going to be starting the MPVM program this fall. And my interests are more in livestock, reproduction, public health. So if anyone has any questions about that or dual degree, more than happy to talk about that.
Thank you, everyone. We will have a chunk of time after this presentation for Q&As as well. So if you don't have questions that are pertaining to the slides that are being presented, do save them for the end as well. So we'll go ahead and get started now.
All right, awesome. So yeah, we're just going to be kind of telling you guys kind of the path to UC Davis, and then also tailor it to from a community college perspective. Yeah, so we'll just keep going. So the overview essentially is navigating from community college, like I said, and then also our requirements to get into the DBM program here, as well as strategies to become a competitive applicant and how to gain valuable experience as a pre-vet student, and kind of touch on also how to do that at a community college level. And then also the application timeline and just the DBM programs and curriculum in general. So a little bit about UC Davis. It's really fun here to begin with. We are currently ranked #1 in the nation, which is super exciting. And we also are the busiest teaching hospital since we have exposure to such full clinical cases. We have so many specialties to offer here, 34 to be exact. We have over 70 active clinical trials right now. We have over $75 million in research funding annually. And like I said, we have a huge patient exposure, so over 60,000 a year, which I think years ago was only like 40,000. So we're growing every year. It's super fun. We have so many clubs that we can be a part of, and you can even start your own if you wanted to when you get here. We get tons of scholarship money. Our admissions team does such a good job at getting us as much funding as possible, which I know is really helpful for a lot of us. And in terms of money, which I know is a super important thing, thinking about taking on a huge debt load, is exciting that we're one of the 2 schools with the highest median starting salary of graduates and the second least median debt of any of the 30 schools. And our average starting salary at a school is about $129,000 a year. And we're the only public DBM program in California. The other program down south a little bit is a private. So a big part of just our admissions talk in general, and especially for you guys since you're already kind of going through a transition itself, is to make your time at community college count. I know it can be hard. I did travel to my community college about an hour, so I know it can be difficult to balance the two, but as much as you can, like nothing is too little experience that you can give. So the biggest thing is to just develop really good study habits early and get good grades in your science overall GPA as much as possible. And research those transfer requirements from your junior college to your school. I know I had a little bit of issues going from community college to Boise State. Usually advisors are super helpful though in making sure that you have what needs to be had. So just reach out with any questions you have, and usually they'll have they have really good attitudes usually about helping, is what I've experienced at least. You can join a pre-vet club and build relationships with your professors that could possibly write you some letters recommendation later, or they have connections. Sometimes it's just all about who you know. It can be really helpful. And then start gaining experience with vets specifically pretty early if you're able to. So volunteer at a shelter, maybe volunteer at a clinic somewhere, at a zoo, anything that you could do. I know it's little time, but as much as you could do, like I said, nothing is too small. And then some general tips for transitioning to a 4-year to finish your bachelor's degree is maintaining a high GPA, meeting with an advisor, like I talked about, getting involved in mentorship. So especially at UC Davis, it's really important to maintain as good of a GPA as you can for your best chances at getting in. So just making sure you're spending a lot of time studying and also understanding what you're studying is just going to help you in the long term, honestly, even when you get here. Like I spoke about advising, you can meet with your advisor. I even reached out before I got to Boise State. I knew I wanted to go there, so I reached out to their advisor early before I was even accepted, just to field questions, so they could field questions from me about what I wanted to do and if I'd be a good fit there. So that's something that you could really do to just get ahead a little bit earlier. So you can meet with a pre-health advisor, subscribe to email newsletters, and at UC Davis, advisors hold a holistic approach when they provide support and feedback during your preparation. So they make sure that you're a really well-rounded applicant, which is super important just in life in general, but also when applying to vet school. So that's really awesome. And exploring vet med. So you can go to so many different expos, and like we have our UC Davis Free Health Conference November of this year, which is open to all of UC Davis and non-UC Davis pre-vets. It's really fun. You get to meet just a ton of different people and get a lot of contacts and learn about different people's paths. And then also it's really important to get involved in things that you're really interested in, and hopefully those things are animal medicine related. So examples of these would be pre-vet student supporting diversity club, veterinary aid club, and 27 heartbeats for those in shelters and zoo. And then mentorship is a huge thing. It's something I become so passionate about as a student, and it started really early with my mentors in undergrad. So just fostering that mentorship with people you respect and look up to, and who can hopefully write you a letter of recommendation or even just show you how you want to practice as a doctor. I know I model a lot of how I want to practice after how I spent a time in the clinic in Idaho. So it's just really good to have those relationships in general, and they can also give you a realistic sense of how vet med is going to be happening for you in a practice.
So before we move on, our other ambassadors are also going to share a little bit about what they did before in terms of the clubs that they were involved with and any advising that they also received before entering to the DVM program as well. So.
I'll go ahead and jump in. So during my pre-vet experience, like I mentioned before, I went to Cal Poly Pomona for undergrad. They have a pretty active pre-vet club, so I got involved in leadership with that for about 3 years, which was something I was able to discuss quite a bit during my vet school interviews and include on my application. They also had a lot of animal studies on campus, so I was able to get involved with things like volunteering at the barn where they bred Arabian horses, or volunteering to help take care of lambs during lambing season. So really just trying to get my hands in everywhere as much as possible to get practical experience before vet school. I also just wanted to make a quick note on the GPA bullet point. A lot of what I heard before vet school was to focus on your GPA and make sure it's as high as possible. But I know it's definitely a struggle, and if there are some classes that you struggle in, it's okay. That can be a point on your application where you show that you've grown. If you have to repeat a class, you can talk about how you changed your approach the second time around, improved your grade. So that can be a good point to show how you can improve yourself.
Yeah, and I can go ahead and talk a little bit about my experience. So at Davis, I was very involved with specifically the pre-vet students supporting diversity club. I was an officer and the president at different points. And I helped start like a second mentorship program so that undergraduates could actually mentor high school students to try to get more and more individuals who may not have mentorship to feel included in vet med, and for more people to consider it as a career option. So that's something I talked about a lot because I love mentorship and how impactful it can be. I definitely agree with what Shannon said, that getting leadership is awesome, not only in the skills that you gain, but it can be a great talking point on your applications because vet schools really want leaders. As a veterinarian, you will be a leader. There's no way around it. You will lead your team of technicians and assistants, or you'll lead research projects or this and that. So leadership is a really great skill to have. So in as many ways as you can showcase it, the more the better. And I would definitely agree with Shannon about like the GPA point. And I think someone had mentioned it in the Q&A, because I know that's can be a lot of, it can be a very like anxiety filling question. It's like, is my GPA high enough? And the answer is you just never know. because I've seen people get in with a 3.0 or lower, and I've seen people get in with 4.0s. So it's a really big range of people that get in. I would say, you know, do the best that you can in your classes, but if you get one F or you get like a couple of classes that you have to repeat, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean you can never go to vet school. It just means that those are things you may have to correct, and that maybe you want to focus on other parts of your application as well to help supplement those areas and showcase other great things that you do. Like, hey, me personally, I did pretty bad in general chemistry and physics up front. So I was like, you know, these aren't my strong suits, but I was good at other things like biology or like topics that interested me. And I showed other things that I could do as well. So I would say just keep that in the back of your mind. Yes, GPA is important, but it's not the only thing that vet schools are looking for. And I would say, just to quickly add, in terms of experience, also just kind of do the best that you can, because I know that for a lot of people, especially people that choose to go to community college, a lot of times it may be due to like financial factors. And sometimes that means that you're also working while you're at like taking classes and stuff. That was definitely the case for me in undergrad. I didn't have much veterinary or animal experience or diverse experience because I had to have a job on campus to support myself. So if you guys are kind of like in the same boat, or if that resonates with you, just know that that is also good experience that you can talk about on your applications, because me personally, I always think any experience teaches you something and you gain something from it. You just have to be able to talk about what you gained from it. So don't think that, oh, like I had to work during all of community college, I couldn't get vet experience, I'm way behind. You're not behind. We're all going at different paces, and that can also be, you know, something unique about your story that may not be the same for other people. So yeah.
Okay, and one of the ways that you could gain experience specifically here at UC Davis is a really cool program we have called the Summer Enrichment Program. So it's an intensive 4-week program to help underrepresented students enhance their preparation for vet school. So you go through coursework, admissions workshops, case presentations, and hands-on vet experience. So either a current or post undergraduate would be best for this opportunity. And then the eligibility requirements are listed there. The dates this year are closed for this summer, but our application for next summer will be opening in January. So keep a lookout for that. And you can also contact Monet with any questions that you might have. And funding is available too if you're traveling to and from Davis. So it's a really cool program. Highly recommend. I know I took summer clinics last year and I had a few students on my rotation, and they got to do quite a bit of not like super hands-on, obviously casework, because that's a little different, like a little bit more advanced, but they were really impressed with the program. So I'd highly recommend based on just past students.
Okay, now we're going to dive into the minimum requirements for our Doctor of Veterinary Medicine program. So to start with, you will have to complete the prerequisite courses required. We will be going over those in the next slide. And then our program does require a bachelor's degree. One thing to note is we are currently the only DVM program in the United States that does have that bachelor degree requirement. And then your bachelor degree can be pending during the time of application as long as you have that completed the following year. So for example, applications are going to be due in September. So this year. And then as long as you have the bachelor's degree by the end of spring 2025, you should be in good standing. And then we also require 3 letters of recommendation, which we'll also be diving into in the next slides. And then for our particular program, we do require 180 hours of veterinary experience. And then you will have to complete 2 different applications. So the first is going to be the VEMCAS application, which stands for Veterinary Medical College Application Services. And then this is pretty much the standard application that you'll complete for all of the vet schools. And then we also have a supplemental application as well. And then once your application has been verified, you'll receive that. And then we also require completion of multiple mini interviews, MMIs. And that's if you make it to the MMI stage. So currently we have switched over to a virtual platform, and we do use Kira Talent for that. And so with the way our process works is you'll have 10 different scenarios, and then you'll have 10 minutes for each scenario as well. And so you'll have 3 minutes for the question, and then 7 minutes, or 3 minutes for the scenario, and then 7 minutes to answer the question. And then yeah, so in total that is about 100 minutes, and those typically take place early December. Okay, now diving into the prerequisite courses for our program. So what you see here on the screen are all the lower division courses that are required, and all of these can be completed at a community college. And so the first one is general biology. And so this is going to be either 2 semesters or 3 quarters, all with lab. And I did give like a little example with just American River College, so that way you can get a general idea of the kinds of courses that are accepted. So you do want to look for the courses that are typically labeled like principles of biology or general biology, just because we won't accept like the foundational or elementary level courses. And then the same thing goes for general chemistry, where we do require either 2 semesters or 3 quarters, all with lab. And then for organic chemistry, we require 2 semesters and only 1 lab requirement for that. And then for physics, I also gave a little example here at the bottom as well for the types of courses that are accepted. So you do want to look out for a course that is focused on trigonometry or calculus-based physics. And then for our statistics course, we are pretty flexible with which course you complete for that. So for example, if you do have a specific course that's related into the major that you're going to be going into, like either biostats or business stats, we will accept that. So one thing to note is we don't currently have statistics courses listed on our course articulation agreements, just because there are a wide range of statistics courses that you can complete. But on our website, we do have course articulation agreements with various community colleges, as well as undergraduate institutions. That way you can see which courses pretty much transfer over for our program. And then one thing to also note is that we do accept online courses as well as online labs. And then you can also apply your AP or IB credits for the lower division courses if you did get a 3 or higher. And then let's see, there was one more thing I wanted to mention with that. I think that's about it. So I'll go over the upper division. Oh, also another question we oftentimes get is whether or not the courses expire. So for our particular program, they do not expire, but you will want to note you will want to find out what it's like for the other DVM programs, just because I know they sometimes will have specific requirements where courses do expire after 10 years or so. So you may have to retake some of the prerequisite courses if you are changing careers and that sort of thing. Okay, and so these are the 3 upper division courses we require. So with these 3 courses, they cannot be completed at a community college, just because they do have to be at that 3rd or 4th year level, so at that junior or senior level. And then there's no lab requirements. And then again, with these can also be completed online as long as they are completed at a regionally accredited institution. So the first is going to be biochemistry. And then you want to make sure that that biochemistry course does have a heavy emphasis on metabolism. And then the second course is physiology. And then with the physiology course, I just want to make sure that it does cover all the major body systems. And then lastly, we do require 1 semester of genetics as well.
Okay, I can jump in and talk about some other requirements that we have here at UC Davis. And this is more in general for when you're applying to any veterinary school. You'll need electronic letters of recommendation or ELORs. They have to be submitted through VMCAS. They can't, handwrite it and mail it to us. That's not allowed, unfortunately. You're going to need at least 3 total. That's the minimum amount of letters you need in order to actually be able to send in your application. And at least one of them has to come from a veterinarian who you've worked with directly. So the minimum is 3, but if you wanted to, you could submit up to 6. There's no real negative impact of submitting more than the 3. But if you wanted to, have a little wiggle room and just ask more than 3 people in case someone wasn't able to submit on time, and then you accidentally end up with 4, no, you're not going to get penalized or anything. And for us specifically at UC Davis, if you submit more than 3, we'll just ask you in our supplemental to pick which 3 you want us to review. Some schools may evaluate all of them if you submit them. So that's just something to keep in mind. whoever is writing your veterinary letter of rec, you want to make sure, they've had some interaction with you in the veterinary setting and can attest to whatever, technical or communication skills or any other really great skills you've exhibited in a clinical setting. And then your other letter of rec writers can be really anyone, as long as they're not related to you. They can be, professors, academic instructors. These people can be great because they can talk about you from an academic perspective. It's not required, at least by UC Davis, to have an academic instructor write a letter of rec. But it might be good to have someone who can say, yeah, this person did well in a class, or specifically a science class, because we do a lot of science in veterinary medicine. So that's someone you could potentially ask. Another one that I see a lot is research mentors. So if you have done or plan to do any kind of research, those can also be really great letters of rec. And if your research mentor also happens to be a veterinarian, they can write your veterinary letter of rec, which is what I did when I applied, double dipping a little, but it's okay. Employers and supervisors, either current or former, are also super great. I think these are great, especially if they come from outside of the veterinary field or animal related field, because they can really showcase a lot of different skills and showcase who you are from different perspectives and not just veterinary or animal related. So these are great ones to have. Extracurricular advisors. So if you volunteered for a group, if you were in a pre-vet club, you did a certain internship, or you were part of some kind of organization, whoever was your supervisor or the advisor for that, that can also be someone who can attest to your character. So yeah, really anyone who can talk about you, preferably in a good light. We don't want anyone to talk about us negatively when we're applying to vet school. So preferably someone who you have a good relationship with, who knows you pretty well, and who can, say different things about you. So you don't want, and I've personally seen people who all of their letters of recs come from veterinarians. And even once I saw someone that all the vets were from the same clinic, and I was like, oh, oh no. Because you really want people to talk about you in a lot of different ways so that admissions can get a good sense of all the different great things you have to offer. So if you're choosing people that are really similar or that are going to say like similar things about you, admissions won't get to learn new things. So you really want to take advantage of getting 3 people minimum who can speak about you in different ways. And then some tips is asking early on and communicating very clearly, making sure you're clear about your deadlines. The deadline for when you want them to submit the letter doesn't have to be the deadline you need to submit the application, because that's super stressful. You can ask them way ahead of time and then give them like, I would say about a month, because a lot of these people are busy, about a month to get everything together and submit. And then trying to ask sooner rather than later, so you're not scrambling in like August, September near the deadline to try to find someone in case someone backs out or can't do your letter at the very end. And then just, being available and willing to, follow up with your recommenders in case they need any extra information. Sometimes like a resume or a statement of purpose is super helpful for them, so they can include even more info about you. Just like really showcasing how excited you are to be applying to and potentially going to vet school can, make you look even more positive to them. So talking a bit about veterinary experience. So not all veterinary schools have an experience requirement. At UC Davis, we do. So you need at least 180 hours of veterinary experience in order for us to review your application. And then this is the definition that VMCAS uses to classify veterinary experience. So it's basically anything that you do while working with a veterinarian or under their supervision. So it can be in a lot of different settings, but the most common one is like being an assistant or a technician within a veterinary clinic. And make sure to contrast this with animal experience, because you may be working with animals, but if there's no veterinarian there, then that's how you know it's not veterinary experience. So that would be your animal hours, things like working on a farm, doing clubs like 4-H or FFA when you were younger, training or showing animals at fairs, working in a shelter, even at a wildlife rescue rehabilitation, because all of these things don't necessarily require a veterinarian to be there. So that's why they wouldn't fall under veterinary experience. And UC Davis doesn't accept online veterinary or animal experience. And then now we'll just have our ambassadors share a little bit about their veterinary experience and what they did prior to entering into the DVM program. Shannon, do you want to start us off, or Kathryn?
I can go ahead. So my experience was largely in the clinic setting. So in Idaho, I worked at a small animal clinic that was primarily general practice. And then our doctors also offered to our community some like urgent care situations. So I got some really cool experience there. I also worked in a lab in undergrad, and she actually wrote the head of the lab actually wrote one of my letters of recommendation. So I was not interested in research, and I made that very clear to her, but I told her I wanted to, get a lot of different experiences and learn what all vet has to offer. She wasn't a veterinarian, but she did work really closely with the state veterinarians. So because of her, I was actually able to visit the state veterinarian and like watch necropsies, talk to him about different things. So you never know what doors are going to be open for you if you try something that you might not want to do. So I'd highly encourage it, even if it's not something that you're just primarily interested in. And then other than that, I didn't do anything in Idaho. But then when I moved home back to California, I worked in another small animal clinic, but I kind of changed gears. I went into a small animal physical rehab center for dogs primarily, occasional cat, which was super fun. So that was basically what I did. And other than that, I also did some animal experience in the sense of just visiting like horse stalls. My manager, her daughter had a horse, and so I had her 9-year-old daughter teach me how to like take care of the horse really well and like let me ride it and things like that. So things that didn't involve a veterinarian, but I got so much experience from that because I had really never been around horses before that. So just different things that show I was interested in all different parts of vet medicine. And yeah, other than that, I worked in undergrad at like restaurants and yogurt shops and stuff. So I learned a lot of leadership roles and just basic work skills in those also. And I think that's about it.
Perfect. I'll jump in next. So as far as veterinary experience, the majority of my experience was in small animal general practice. During undergrad, I worked in a small animal GP for about 3 years as an assistant. I also, you saw a few slides back, we talked about the summer enrichment program at UC Davis. I was also a summer enrichment program student. Highly recommend the program, by the way. But that also gave me some experience in livestock medicine, equine medicine, and a little bit of specialty experience working with surgeons. So that was my veterinary experience. As far as animal experience, I really wanted to get some experience with wildlife because I was interested potentially in wildlife and zoo med. So I actually spent about a semester completing a program in Alaska where I did some research on marine mammals. I got to work with a veterinary pathologist working on some marine mammal necropsies, which is essentially the animal version of an autopsy. And through that, I also got to do like some invertebrate research. I was looking at like different algae samples under the microscope to identify different algal toxins that were in the environment. So that was a really cool thing that I got to talk about on my application. I would say all of veterinary experience and animal experience is good. Like Kim was saying earlier, you can learn something from every single experience. But I really wanted to have some like different and unique experiences on my application that went along with kind of the area I was interested in. So I was specifically seeking out that wildlife experience. I also along the same wildlife track, I spent a summer volunteering at a wildlife sanctuary in middle of nowhere, Minnesota. It was great time, got to learn a lot about blackberry ecology. So that was another really cool thing that I got to do before vet school.
Nice. And then I can briefly touch on some of my experiences. I started getting veterinary experience when I was a senior in high school. I volunteered at the only clinic in my county. So if you wanted to see any other vet, you had to drive at least an hour and a half in any direction, unless you crossed the border, because I lived in a border town. So those were your only options. There was only one vet there, and I worked with him for a couple months. And I would say all of my vet hours came from working there over the summers. I chose to do that during college because I wanted to be back home to see my family during the summer. Since I live in SoCal, I couldn't visit them as much. So I was like, oh, I'll kill two birds with one stone, which is like a horrible saying for future veterinarians. But that's what I wanted to do, spend time with family while getting the vet hours in. And it made me realize that I didn't really like small animal general practice. I liked the thought process that veterinarians had, and I liked the science and all those things, but I didn't really like being inside all the time. And like dogs and cats are cute, but I don't know, there was just something missing for me. So when I got to undergrad, I did a lot of research and it was livestock related, and I realized that those were things that interested me a lot. And as I mentioned before, I was also like working part-time while I was in college. So all my veterinary experience came from this one clinic, not diverse at all. But I think I tried to make up for that by showcasing my other interests, which were like public health and research and livestock. So if you don't have access to like being able to do a bunch of things, especially things for free, I wasn't really able to do a lot of things for free, like volunteering. I tried to look for things that were paid so I could pay for school. It's okay to not be able to do a bunch of things. Just try to do things that really interest you and things that you're passionate about. Even my job that was in veterinary related, I was passionate about. It was one of those like high school programs that helps low-income students prepare to apply to college. So like I said, I really liked mentorship. So that experience was super awesome. And I also talked about it in my application as a way for me to like connect with a lot of different kinds of people, and, you know, give back to communities like the one where I was from. So yeah, I had a lot of research experience. I had a little bit of animal experience. I did one internship with like baby goats when I was in my freshman year of undergrad. It was amazing. I think that was the turning point for me of being like, yes, livestock is the way. And yeah, I would say nothing too crazy on my side. Pretty simple, just research and livestock. But that's okay. It's okay to if you know what you like, to just kind of do that, and that's it. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go ahead and keep going. So these are just some factors or like characteristics that not just us as UC Davis, but all veterinary schools are looking for in their applicants. You don't have to have or embody every single one of these, but these are just to give you an idea of kind of the skills that we think are important for future veterinarians to have, and that we hope that you guys who will be applying also have. So I won't go ahead and read them all, but even if you just Google, I always tell people to do this, just Google like, oh, what does it take to be a good veterinarian, or what are the qualities of a good veterinarian? Lots of things like this and more will come up. So I recommend doing that just to get a sense of like, oh, what is kind of expected of a veterinarian to be like? Am I like that? Or, you know, can I gain some of these skills, or what do I already have? Those are great questions to start asking yourself even now. Yeah. Okay. Oh, the little boxes are obscuring my view, Anila. And I don't know what those boxes are. Oh, okay.
There you go. Perfect.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So just some factors that you can think about as you get closer to applying eventually. these things are going to help you decide what vet schools should be like your top priority for applying for. Because, you know, for many people, not everyone has like the financial means to be able to apply to all the veterinary schools. There's about 33 roughly in the United States right now, and it costs a nice chunk of change to apply to each one. So sometimes we have to be strategic with which schools we apply to based off of our available resources, and also based off of, you know, would I even like that school if I were to get in? So that's what I always tell people. Like, if you got offered admission there, would you even want to go there? Do you like it enough to, you know, if it's halfway across the country in a state you've never been to, this and that, like, would you want to go there? So these are kind of the factors that play into deciding whether or not a school is a good fit for you. Things like location, how far you have to move, if you would prefer to stay in state versus out of state. Even going outside of the country is an option as well if you want to go internationally for vet school. Things like weather. I feel like people never think about the weather. Me personally, I only applied along the West Coast because I didn't want to live where it snowed too much. That was just me personally. I get cold very easily. Being able to move with pets, family members, or partners if you do have to move far away. And then a really important aspect is if you can establish residency after your first year or at some point while you're at that school, because establishing residency can really help you reduce tuition costs. Because vet school is expensive, but they're not equally expensive. And sometimes things like being able to establish residency, which is something that UC Davis offers. After your first year, you establish residency, and then you can pay in-state tuition for your remaining 3 years. That can really like help bring down some of that debt that you will eventually have to, you know, pay off when you graduate. So that's a really nice thing that UC Davis and other schools offer. Clinical year setup. So I think it was mentioned maybe in the chat or earlier in the presentation, but our fourth year is when we do all our clinical rotations. So our first 3 years are didactic or in class. Other schools do it differently. They do just 2 years of in class and then 2 years clinical rotations. So deciding, you know, what setup is best for you can be determined by, oh, maybe I learned better, like, you know, sitting in a lecture hall and like getting lectured at, doing discussions or taking tests. I know we don't like taking tests, but maybe that's how you like to learn. Or do I learn better like actually being hands-on on the job, looking at cases? So I can kind of help you figure out like what kind of setup you prefer at a school. If they have their own teaching hospital, at UC Davis, we have our own teaching hospital. So that means during our fourth year, our students mostly stay at UC Davis in order to do their rotations, but there are some schools that don't have their own teaching hospital. So those students have to go everywhere else in order to satisfy their rotation requirements, which can be kind of a bummer because then those are extra costs that you're going to have. You have to find housing, you have to potentially pay for flights, depending on how far you go, transportation, food, or cost of living in that place where you're going to do your rotations. So that's something else that I feel like a lot of people don't consider, but can actually be super important, especially if costs are an important factor for you. Externships and opportunities that are available at that school, prereqs or the requirements to actually get in. It would be ideal if you had the prerequisites for the schools you're applying for. So I would probably try to only apply to schools that you've actually completed the prereqs, because you'd hate to and I've seen this before where people will apply and then they realize they took the wrong class, or they forgot to take this class, or there was some kind of mix up with their prereqs, and then they didn't even get their application evaluated, because the school first screens you to make sure all the requirements are met. And if every little box isn't checked off at the beginning, unfortunately, you get screened out. So it's really important to double check your prereqs and make sure you're on the right track before you apply. How long the program is here at UC Davis. We're a 4-year program, and I would say on average, most vet schools are 4-year programs, but there are some exceptions. So 3-year program, if you want to get out of there as quick as possible and just get to work right away, maybe that's for you. If you want to, go real slow, take your time. 5-year might be good for you. And from what I've seen, typically 5-year programs are international. So if you're already considering international, that may be, something you want to think about too is, oh, do I want to stay that extra time to finish the DVM? And then finally, if you have any special interests, like if you like research, if you want to work with a certain species or in a certain specialty, looking up if that school offers opportunities related to that, or has a lot of faculty or has programs devoted to those things to give you more opportunities to be engaged with that during your time there. That's also something you can add to your criteria for how to evaluate schools. Okay. So this is the admissions timeline for submitting your veterinary school applications. And for the most part, this is the general timeline for everyone, except for that last part in October. So the VMCAS application, it always opens mid to late January of each year. This year was January 23rd. The earliest you can submit it is May 9th, and that's because in early May, it's when VMCAS actually opens the last section that you need, which allows you to select the individual schools you want to send your application to. So it doesn't send it to all of them, unfortunately. I wish, because then I'd save a lot of money and I'd have more options. But unfortunately, you have to select the ones that you want to send your application to, because you get charged per school that you add to your list. But you won't be able to do that until May. So from January to May, you can do every other aspect of the application except pick the schools. So technically May is the earliest you can submit, because once you're able to pick the schools, boom, 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 it's gone. You can submit. The hard deadline, when everything has to be in, your school choices, letters of rec, your personal statement, all the grade entry, even your transcripts, everything has to be in by September 16 this year. And these dates, the days tend to change very slightly year to year, but it's always the same kind of pattern. Mid to late January, it opens. About early to mid-May, you get to see the schools, and about mid-September is when the deadline is. So those are things to keep in mind, but especially if you're applying that year, you really want to get to know the important dates for your application cycle so you don't miss anything. And then specifically for UC Davis, typically in mid-October, so this year, October 15th, is when our supplemental application is due. So some schools include their supplemental application in the VMCAS, so you'll have to complete those supplementals by the same deadline as the VMCAS, which is a bit unfortunate, but we're nice here at UC Davis, and we give you a little extra time to work on it. So for us, you don't have to submit ours until October 15th. Okay, and this is kind of an overview of how we actually decide which people to offer admissions to. So I know we mentioned before we have an interview process called the MMIs. So those typically take place about early-ish December. Usually they let people know around like late November if they've gotten an interview. And then people actually have the interviews early December. After the multiple mini interview, they're going to rank everyone. Roughly 240 people would have been interviewed, and then they're going to offer admissions to 150. So that's our normal class size, is 150. And then they'll put about 45 people on a wait list based off of, I don't know if this has been updated, Anila, but it'll include not just your MMI score, but also everything else, so the rest of your application, as well as some other criteria that we've incorporated now into admissions decisions. And then in January is when people get to know if they were offered admissions, if they were waitlisted, or if they were denied. And then by April 15th is the common deadline for all vet schools in order to receive an acceptance or decline admissions. So they give you a little bit of time to hear back from all the schools and then make your decision. But if you do have an admission from somewhere, if you need to accept it or decline it if you want by April 15th.
All right, I'll go ahead and jump in here. So it's no secret that there are definitely some costs associated with going to vet school. So that's something that you want to consider when you're applying. When you're doing your VMCAS application, there are some fees associated with it. So your first application is going to be $234. You can apply for a fee waiver for that. And then each program after that is an additional $128. Most schools, I think every school that I applied to had a supplemental application and supplemental application fee. For UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, it's $60. So that'll be in addition to the VMCAS application fee. Um, I think most of my supplemental application fees were somewhere between $50 and $100. If you are planning to apply to schools that do in-person interviews, then you definitely want to factor in the cost of hotels, plane tickets, rental cars if you're going out of state, because those can also add up, and just be aware of that during the application process. As far as the cost of tuition for vet school, as a public university, Davis tends to have a lower tuition than some of the private universities. So for California residents, right now it's just under $33,000 a year. And if you're not a California resident, then it's just a little bit over $45,000 a year. One of the really nice things here at Davis is that you can apply for California residency after your first year of vet school. That's not the same for all vet schools, but some other schools also allow you to apply for residency after your first year. And then since vet school tends to have quite a bit of tuition costs, a lot of people end up taking out loans. So each year you'll want to fill out your free application for federal student aid or your FAFSA. Usually they open up, I think, early January and are due around like March, April. They always publish the deadline every year, but that will determine what federal loans you're offered, and that'll also determine if you're offered something called the Health Professions Scholarship Loan, or HPSO. That one goes to students with like a higher financial need, and it has a lower interest rate on it, which is nice. As far as loans, you do want to check what the interest rates are going to be on your loans. If you take out any private loans, those tend to have higher interest rates than federal loans. And you can also apply for as many grants and scholarships as you can. Here at UC Davis, every year vet students typically fill out a scholarship application. We can apply for several scholarships at once, and then a couple months after that's due, they let us know if we've been granted any scholarships and how much from there. And we also have something called a Return to Aid grant for select students. All right, and then we'll go into more detail about this on the next slide, but this is kind of a broad overview of the curriculum here at UC Davis. So the first couple of years, years 1 and 2, are going to be very foundational. You're going to learn a lot of comparative things, comparative anatomy, comparative physiology, but you don't spend all of your time in the classroom. You get to do these really fun mini rotations where they'll actually send you into the clinic to shadow a fourth-year student on different services throughout the hospital. So you get to be exposed to all sorts of different types of medicine. I spent some time in like the equine medicine service, which is something I probably wouldn't have done if I hadn't have been assigned that for the mini rotation. And it is a really cool learning experience, and it also kind of gives you an idea of what to expect for fourth year. During year 3, then in the fall, we switch into streams. So you can either go large animal or small animal. And again, we'll break that down in more detail in just a minute here. And then in year 4, you transition into clinics. So you're out of the classroom, you're in the veterinary teaching hospital, and you're working with the clinicians. And that can also include things like externships, where you're leaving the teaching hospital here, going to outside practices or other vet schools, and you have the opportunity to take elective rotations in areas that you're more interested in. And I also want to add in there, during years 1 through 3, each class is assigned a homeroom in one of our main lecture buildings called Valley Hall. And each class decides individually. We typically take a vote at the beginning of the school year, but you can bring your pets to school and have a place for them in homeroom. So a lot of people will bring their dogs, have dog crates in homeroom, and kind of everyone in the class gets to know the class dogs. It's really fun. And I would say particularly in years 1 and 3, I guess 3 technically, beginning of 4, we do have business ethics and wellness woven into the curriculum. So those are something that you kind of have this continuous conversation all the way through vet school to make sure that you're well prepared in those topics when you leave vet school. All right, so here's a bit more detail on the curriculum. So you can see for years 1 and 2, everything is kind of broken down into blocks. So everyone will be in the same courses. You start out in year 1 with something called prologue, which is essentially orientation. And then you go into basic foundations, which is kind of all of the science background and anatomy that you need to have a good start when you get into more anatomy and physiology based courses. And then you go into immunology, hematology, and then pharmacology, nutrition, and toxicology. While you're doing those blocks, and you only do one block at a time. So kind of just to break this down a little bit more, for year 1, oh, sorry, I just realized you can't see my mouse on the screen. I was like moving it around. But for year 1, when you're in basic foundations, that'll be the block that you're taking. You're not taking the other 2 blocks at the same time. It's just basic foundations and then your professional and clinical skills and your mini rotations, which kind of go throughout the whole year. But these courses in purple here, those are all one at a time, which is really nice for kind of quality of life and having time to adequate time to sit down and really study one subject, and spreading out tests. It worked very well for me because I wasn't having to focus on like 12 different courses at once. Kind of in second year, it's the same sort of setup with the block system. You're doing kind of one physiologic system at a time. And then in third year, it gets a little bit more complicated. So like I mentioned before, you split off into either large animal stream or small animal stream. And then in the spring, large animal students will split off again into equine medicine, livestock medicine, and zoologic medicine. Throughout third year, you're also taking a comparative medicine class to make sure that you're still, whichever stream you're not in, you're still getting that comparative medicine, learning everything that you need to. And you also get to start doing anesthesia and live animal surgeries, which is really fun. And that also goes throughout all of third year. When you're starting fourth year, you start off with, and this can kind of change order a little bit, but some people will be in business first, and some people will be in clinical pathology first at the beginning of fourth year. So you take a business and communication course. That's really helpful for basically all the skills that you need when you're looking at different job offers, deciding if you want to own a practice. We have a workshop on understanding your student loans and different options for paying them back. So that's what the business and communication course entails. And then clinical pathology is a good review of lab skills that you will need when you go into clinics. And then after that, you start your clinical rotations. Aside from just the Doctor of Veterinary Medicine program, we also have a couple of dual degree programs. So the first one is VSTP, or the Veterinary Scientist Training Program, and that is where you come out with both a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine and a PhD. So that's for students who really want to get involved in basic and translational research and advance the health of people, animals, even the environment. So that program takes 8 years. How it works is you do your first 2 years of vet school, then you essentially step out of vet school for 4 years to complete your PhD, and then you come back for your last 2 years of vet school to finish up your DVM. And the VSTP program is fully funded and you get a living stipend, which is really nice. Great opportunity to come out with 2 degrees and not have a lot of student loans. And some of the areas that you can train in for VSTP are biomedical research, zoonotic and vector-borne diseases. So these are basically diseases that can pass from humans to animals or animals to humans. And then vector-borne diseases are basically diseases that things like mosquitoes and ticks can carry around. You can study food security and safety, and you can also study environmental quality on animal, human health, and well-being. We also have the dual DVM and MPVM degree, which is a DVM and a Master of Preventative Veterinary Medicine. And that's for people who are more interested in epidemiology, research, and One Health. And if you haven't heard the term One Health before, it's essentially combining human health, animal health, and environmental health into one conversation and seeing how all of those are intertwined. So that also involves a lot of partnership with faculty, but it takes a little bit less time. It's only 5 years, and it's the same sort of structure where you do 2 years of your DVM, you step out for a year and do your MPVM, and then you come back and finish your last 2 years of vet school. So you can study, like I was saying, One Health, vector-borne diseases, planetary health, wildlife medicine, shelter medicine, statistics, clinical trials. There's so many things that you can study in either the VSTP or MPVM program.
I can also share a bit about these programs, since I think I saw a question about the different topics you can cover while you're doing these programs. So these programs are really great for people who like research. If you don't like research, you probably don't want to do this because they will make you do research. But if you like research and you kind of have like goals in mind about the kind of work you want to do after you graduate veterinary school, these can be super helpful. So for example, like me, I know I want to go into public health and I like epidemiology. So I thought, oh, the MPBM would be a great way for me to learn about more topics and gain more skills that are going to help me with different career pathways associated with my interests. And that would be the same thing for the PhD. The PhD is just quite a bit more time, so you really have to love research if you do the dual DVM PhD. But there is really a lot of room to do your research and to take classes on anything that interests you. So even if it's something that's not up here, they're usually, both these programs, pretty open to you pursuing things that you're interested in. So if you have specific interests related to animal biology or behavior, or even human related things that interconnect with animal things and environmental things, or if you just want to do animal and environmental interactions, like those are totally things that you can do. You just have to, find the right type of mentors and opportunities to kind of get that going. But yeah, if anyone has like specific questions about especially the MPBM. I'm not in the PhD program, so I can't speak as much to it, but the MPBM program I can talk a bit more about.
All right. And then one of the really amazing things about veterinary medicine is just the really wide variety of career opportunities that you'll have. So, as a veterinarian, the world is your oyster, really. You can go into private practice, which is what a lot of people think of when they're thinking of a veterinarian. So, like the vet down the street that you take your dog or your cat to, or a livestock vet, an exotic animal vet. You can go into, there we go, corporate veterinary medicine. So you can either practice medicine, or sometimes veterinarians will end up in more of like a leadership management type position. You can go into shelter medicine and do a lot of population health work. The government hires veterinarians for both the USDA and the FDA. They do a lot of things like pharmacology research, food safety research. The USDA is responsible for a lot of like inspections, regulations, making sure all of our food supply is safe. You can go into research or teaching, like our professors at the vet school. You can go into public health and even do things like using animal models to research human health. You can do global veterinary medicine, like I was mentioning with One Health before, that involves people and the environment and animal health. So that's something that people are looking into all around the world. You can even work for the Army Corps or the Air Force. Both of them hire veterinarians, both for public health and for treating their working animals. So after you finish vet school, 4 years to get there if you go to UC Davis or another 4 year program. After that, you will have to pass something called the NAVLE, which is the North American Veterinary Licensing Exam. And depending on what state you want to practice in, some states also have additional state boarding exams. California no longer does, but I think a lot of other states do. Some veterinarians, after they graduate and pass the NAVLE, want to specialize in a particular field. So you can do things like get a PhD or a master's in a specific topic, or you can also pursue something like an internship or residency. So internships are often done to kind of really cram a lot of experience into a year after graduation. So you can really hit the ground running after your internship. And a lot of residencies require you to have a internship before you come to residency, just to make sure you've got all of your skills and are good with your medical practice. Usually for residency, there will be different approved programs depending on which specialty you're wanting to go into, but there are a lot of different specialties. You can go into surgery, you can go into internal medicine, you can go into pathology. Really anything that you can think of that would be a specialty in human medicine is likely also going to be a specialty in veterinary medicine. Oh, and during residency, you do get paid. I won't say you get paid a lot. They typically don't pay you a whole ton, but you do get paid. So that is a bonus of going that route. And then for any questions, you can refer to the UC Davis website, or here's also our email or our phone number for our admissions department. You guys met Anila today and Brandy as well. They are both wonderful. So if there's any questions that you can't find the answer to on the website, or you just want to get some clarification, please don't hesitate to reach out to them.
Now we can go ahead and begin the live Q&A. Looks like we do already have a few questions lined up here. I'll go ahead and read the first one. It's how can I get into a research program? So there's quite a few different ways to get into research programs. Within community college, I'd highly encourage you to reach out to your instructors to see if they're involved in any research, like for your biology or chemistry courses. That's one way to get involved. I don't know if anyone of the ambassadors want to chime in on how they got involved in research. But...
For me, I reached out to my anatomy and physiology teachers and when I got to Boise State. So I literally just walked up and asked. I knew one of them was the head of a really the lab I was speaking about earlier. She's really big in Idaho and like just animal health, and what she does is awesome. So I knew about her just from hearing her name. And I just was like, hey, I want to be a vet one day. Would you mind if I came into your lab? And she's like, sure. So she literally just put me on a project, and it wasn't a lot, but it was really cool to be a part of. So really just making connections. That's a huge part about life, but I think just specifically for vet school, just making connections and not being afraid to put yourself out there is super important. So I would say if someone's researching something that you're interested in, ask them. If not, they might have someone else you could go to. So always just ask.
The only thing that I would add is we did a bunch of we in the falls we usually do a lot of stuff on summer programs and research, and there is a lot of programs like the NIH has one. And so just go back and look of like I think we've done like probably 7 or 8 sessions, and the videos and all the slides are posted. So there's a lot of summer programs that like, do accept veterinary students or people that are interested in animal biology, and also a lot of programs that are either away, and they're all funded, and some of them pay you as much as like $8,000 for 2 weeks. I mean, for 2 months, sorry. I wish it was 2 weeks. Shoot. But it's um I know somebody who is actually a pre-vet student and was at the NIH last summer doing animal models. So yeah. So just go back and look at those.
Thank you, Jubin. All right, so the next question is, what other vet schools did our ambassadors apply to?
So I personally applied to 6 different schools, UC Davis being one of them, also Washington State University, Colorado State University, Mississippi State University, University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and then University of Melbourne in Australia.
I can go next. I applied to 4 vet schools, Davis, the other one in California, Western, that one's in Pomona, Colorado State, and Oregon.
I applied to Davis, obviously, University of Tennessee, Knoxville, Georgia, and Kansas State are, I believe, what I applied to. And then I also, someone had asked earlier about if you don't get in the first time, if you can still apply or what that looks like. And I actually took a few cycles to get in, so I'm happy to speak on that. My first cycle, I only applied to 2 schools. Oh, sorry, I also applied to Washington State University. I only applied to UC Davis and Washington State University, and I honestly was not very prepared. So I was bummed when I didn't get an interview for either school, but I also was not totally surprised. A few really big life changes happened for me in between that and my second application cycle. And the second time I applied to a ton of schools, most of which I probably wouldn't have lived in, like actually gone to if I got in. So highly recommend only applying to ones that you'll want to actually go to. And then in between those 2 cycles, I got really serious about finding out what I can really do to improve my application, since my grades weren't a thing that I was super passionate about getting up my GPA, even just a few. I just knew at that point, I'd had so much schooling, it'd be really hard to get my GPA up too much more than it was. So I took a professional approach instead. And in my job that I got when I got back home to California, I tried my best to take on a leadership role in my job. I had really great mentors and bosses, luckily, who allowed me to kind of take control of pretty much what I wanted to do. I just had to ask them. I would love to show leadership skills and that I really want to work for a position at a school. So I did things like make educational portfolios for our clients. I worked in physical rehab. So a lot of people in general are like, okay, so you're just going to put a dog on a treadmill and that's it. But there's actually a ton of science that goes into it. Not only the physics, but also the medications that we prescribe and everything. So I learned a ton. I was able to become a case manager for osteoarthritis medicine through UT. They paid for me to do that. I did like a 6-week course. I did an online course for equine health. I respect the horses, but as I stated previously, I'm small animal girly. So I just to learn more about them. But yeah, I just took on as many roles as I could within my breadth, because I also was newly married, I had a family. So I want to just stress, like, don't do things you aren't passionate about, because you really want to be able to show that on your application, especially your second or third time applying. And also, don't give up hope. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And just because it took me 2 extra times to get in doesn't mean I'm going to be less of a doctor than my classmates. And nobody cares once you're here. Like, literally, people know and they're like, okay, cool. Like, it's really not a big deal. I know it can be really disheartening, but you'll end up exactly where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there.
Thank
This
you
is
so
a
much. Go ahead.
this is the question that's come up of multiple times. Are you at an advantage or disadvantage if you do your undergrad at UC Davis?
I can answer that question from an admission standpoint. So we don't look at the institution you attend for equity reasons. On the front end of the application, there's three main things that we're looking at. So the first one is going to be primarily your GPA, but specifically we're looking at two GPAs. So the first GPA is going to be your first 45 semester or 68 quarter units. And then the second GPA is every single science class you've ever completed. And then the second part of the initial admissions ranking is in regards to your letters of recommendation that Kimberly had touched upon. So basically, each of your references is going to be ranking you on a scale from 1 to 5 on various attributes like communications, leadership, ethics, morals, your pursuit to become a veterinarian, and those sorts of things. And so we take that composite score and add it to your admissions ranking. And then the third part of it is going to be the distance travel score. So there's no real way to prepare for that part of the application. It's just based on your lived experiences. So we're looking at economic factors, environmental factors, and educational factors. And so as you can see, I didn't mention the institution you attended. We do admit a lot of students that are from UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine or undergraduate program, just because a large volume of those students are applying, mostly due to the location. However, UC Davis also, since we have a pretty big animal science program, if you look at the VEMCAS stats, we pretty much, it's a huge chunk of it is UC Davis undergraduates, but that's probably just because of the heavy emphasis on agriculture and animal sciences.
And then this is another question. Can you take your prereqs at a community college and are you going to be disadvantaged or shunned or be looked at unfavorably if you've done that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm so glad you asked it. I was supposed to cover that during the prerequisite slide, and the answer is no. So it's going to be weighed equally. So those prerequisite courses, as well as any of the lower division courses, they are weighed equally. And that's, again, for equity reasons. I actually do highly encourage completing the courses at a community college, especially if you do plan on transferring to UC Davis, just because the class sizes are going to be significantly bigger, and you'll definitely get more of that one-on-one at a community college level.
People also wanted to know about your summer enrichment program, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this year is going to be the first year where we're going to have two different sessions, and they're going to be both 4 weeks long. And the neat thing about this program is now it is fully funded, so all of your living expenses, including food, will be covered, and you also do receive a stipend at the end of it. And so Shannon can probably also briefly discuss her experience with the program, but you're pretty much gonna have experience like what it's pretty much like to be a vet student here at UC Davis, where you're gonna be doing different case studies, as well as going into clinical rotations. And then we also do like an admission session for the students as well. And then you do also get that one-on-one with the admissions team.
And is it open to community college students?
Yes, as long as you meet the minimum requirements for the program. And I can go ahead and link the program.
I'm going to put that in there.
Perfect. And then, yeah, Monet Roberts is a really good contact to also reach out to as well. She'll be able to also walk you through the application process and then let you know exactly the types of candidates that we are looking for. And then that should most likely open up in mid-January. And then you'll find out by around April or May if you've gotten into the program.
And I'll jump in for just a second with some of my experiences with summer enrichment program. It is a 5-week program, and you get to spend time in the clinics like we were mentioning earlier. You also get to do things like a GRE workshop. You get to do mock interviews. The mock interview for me was very, very helpful for my vet school interviews. You get to meet some of the clinicians when you're working on your rotations, and you also get to do things like handling labs or anatomy and physiology labs. So it's a very good broad overview of kind of everything you can do in vet school, and I would highly recommend applying. It was really a great experience for me as an undergrad to really confirm that I wanted to go into vet med and I was taking the right career path.
Oh, this is another question that's come up, and this comes up also in a lot of our pre-med stuff is course load. Do you recommend somebody taking biology, chemistry, physics, calculus all at the same time and working 40 hours a week and volunteering 20 hours a week? Does that matter? Is that taken into account? Besides, I don't know who could do that, but
Um, I can speak on it a little, Anila, and then you can correct anything from admission standpoint. For your mental health, I'd recommend not doing that. If you haven't gotten to those courses yet, they're super difficult. And like we were talking about, as much as you're able to keep your GPA as high as possible, that should be your priority when it comes to choosing your course load. I think there were maybe 2 semesters I took like 18 credits, but those are because I was able to do filler classes on top of my degree, like biology degree classes. So I never, I'm not gonna say never. I sometimes took off more than I could chew. It was not fun. You'll get there either way. So if it takes you a little bit longer, that's totally fine. We'd rather see that, I think, than have poor grades and a whole bunch more on your resume. It's probably case dependent, but I think most people would have a hard time taking all core classes at the same time. I think most schools recommend taking like 2, maybe 3 at the same time. At least that's what my advisor told me, especially when you get into those upper division, because it's a new learning curve when you get up there. And yeah, so I would say it doesn't matter as long as you're getting good grades and you're still having a well-rounded experience to the best of your ability.
Yeah, exactly what Kathryn said. It really doesn't matter. Even if you want to be part-time and just do 1 or 2 courses at a time, that's totally understandable. And like with the 100 veterinary hours, yeah, like it is only 180 hours that we require as long as you've diversified that in some capacity. I know sometimes the admission statistics can be a little daunting because you'll see like an average of like 2,100 hours. Well, that's students that are applying with anywhere between 180 hours to 20,000 hours. But like I had mentioned with the initial admissions ranking, it's not based on your hours, your veterinary hours. So you do want to pay extra attention to your GPAs and just maintaining those relationships with your references.
yeah, and I think it's one of the important things is that like if you have to work, like you need to work to put a roof over your head and food in your stomach, and that's a reality a lot of people have. And so um and there are people that are fortunate enough that don't have to work and go to college, and but I think that's the whole road traveled is everybody has a different road that has to go and circumstances. Um, so yeah, don't. This is something that we hear on the pre-med side quite a bit. Is that don't try to be a hero and take 4 hard classes, and then having to work full time and do everything else. That's a recipe for getting bad grades. And I think one of our speakers one time said like bad grades are just like herpes; they never leave you. And so you know, it's a bad term, but it's like it's forever. Like your bad grades stay with you for a long time. So, yeah, don't do that.
I think I would just emphasize too something that our school takes really seriously is a work-life balance. And any pre-vet student I am able to tell this to until I'm blue in the face, I will. Like, you are a human outside of medicine, and you should be remembering that. I know it's super difficult to balance an application, but just please remember that. Like, always take care of yourself. I know we all know it's stressful. It's hard, but just take care of yourself and everything else will fall into place. I can also answer about working during vet school. Um, It is definitely possible, especially I would say in the first 2 to 2.5 years. Into third year, it can get a little bit tricky just because you get a lot more busy. But there are people who work like part-time jobs. We have some jobs on campus for specifically for students. I was able to do treatment crews, so it's just 4 to 6 hours a week into 2-hour blocks um, to get me into the hospital and earn a little extra money. There definitely are some of my classmates who have to work more for rent and things like that, and it's doable. I'm not going to say it's easy, but they make it work as best as they can. I would say once you get to like later third year and into fourth year, it's definitely not possible just because you're in clinics sometimes all day, every day. So it's,
So, my question is for each of the students, if you could go back and talk to your pre-vet self when you first started this journey, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time? What advice would you give? What would you do differently, and what would you do the same?
For me, one thing that I wish I could tell myself during undergrad was not to stress as hard as I did about grades. I know that there's a lot of emphasis on really keeping that high GPA, and it is important, but I kind of made that GPA my entire existence, and it definitely took a toll on my mental health. So, like I was saying before, if you don't do so well in a class, it's not the end of the world. It's a great opportunity to show growth. And yeah, just don't think that's going to end your journey. Don't let the GPA consume you. I also wish that I could have tried different study methods more while I was getting my undergraduate degree, because I found that a lot of the more passive methods that I was using in undergrad didn't work so well when I got to vet school. So I do wish I would have explored that a little bit more. One thing that I wouldn't change in my pre-vet journey was really seeking out experiences for the fields that I was interested in, not just wanting to check off boxes of, okay, I've worked in this field, this field, this field. I really wanted to do things that I was passionate about, and so I wouldn't change that.
I can go next. So I would agree with a lot of things that Shannon said. For me personally, I don't think I would change much. I think if I could talk to my previous pre-vet self, I tell myself to like enjoy undergrad a bit more, because my plan early on was to apply straight through. So that means not only are you applying in your third year going on to fourth year, but you have to have everything completed by that time. So you're doing a bunch of stuff in your first couple years. So I didn't feel like I enjoyed college as much until my fourth year, because my applications were already in and there was nothing else to do. So I feel like, like, yes, we're trying to get to that next step after college, which is hopefully vet school. But it's also, appreciating the journey you're on, and, living in the moment as well, and trying not to take for granted, like, that you're in college, which is like a great feat in itself as well, and that you're probably doing all these other great things. So that's probably something I would tell my younger self, and also not to compare myself to other pre-vet people. Especially at Davis, there was just a lot of pre-vet people. So it was really easy to, be talking to classmates or friends and hear all the millions of things they're doing, or all the people that have 4.0s and this and that. And it just like eats away at you a little, because you're like, oh, I'm not like all these people. Like you start to think, well, everyone's perfect except me, which is totally not the case, because then everyone would be in vet school. Even though there's not enough seats for everyone would be in vet school if everyone's perfect. So trying to, you know, prioritize your mental health really early on, and, just appreciating that, you are unique and that you have things to offer, and you don't have to be like everyone else in order to be a great veterinarian someday. And then what was the last thing, Jobin?
What would you do differently? What advice would you give to yourself? And what would you do exactly the same?
Oh, what I would do the same. Um, Definitely making like connections with people. I feel like that's been the most helpful thing from like undergrad and even in vet school is like not only putting yourself out there to do experiences, but not living in a bubble when you do those experiences. Like when I did research, I like really got to know my mentor and she essentially convinced me to do the MPBM and she helped like steer me towards livestock and like she introduced me to a lot of faculty and opportunities. Um, so that's just one example, but always when you're taking advantage of opportunities, take advantage of like the people too and building relationships with them because you never know, they can help you maybe later on in life connect you to a job opportunity or an internship or put in a good word for you for a residency or this and that. And apart from like the great mentorship too, really trying to find people who want to help you on your journey and support you during that. So definitely those were things I wouldn't change was having good mentorship and building those connections with people.
I don't think I would have changed too much, honestly. It was a wild ride, but I'm glad it happened the way it did. I think the biggest thing I would change would be to seek out people that were also pre-vet. My Boise State didn't have a huge pre-vet community, so I really was only close with those people in my clinic, and those weren't always people applying to schools at the same time or the same place as me. So it can get pretty lonely, the application process. And my parents, I love them, but they only know so much about this whole process. So it was really, it was hard sometimes. So I think I would just reach out to the friends around you, talk to people, listen when people need to just vent because um, that's pretty much our day to day still. We lean on each other a lot and we all have a really strong common interest. So it's really nice to be close to people that have the same interests as you.
Great. I don't think I have any thing else. Miss Ahmed, do you have anything to add or any last words of wisdom?
Nothing to add. We definitely are all here as a resource. So definitely do reach out to us if you have any questions about the admissions process or if you'd like to set up an admissions appointment. And we did include our contact information in the chat as well as links to the course articulation agreements, to the course substitution form, and then just the overall prerequisite courses that are required for the program. Yeah, thank you so much for having us here today.
Great. Well, thank you again. And next Friday, the 4th, we have Dr. Gantry, who's the Dean of Student Programs and Admission, and he's coming by himself. So you guys come and ask him all the questions that you want to answered if something wasn't answered today. And again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kathryn, Shannon, and Kimberly for making yourself available on a Friday afternoon. So thank you, everyone.